All right, everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming to our Junior College Night number 2 webinar. A couple of housekeeping tips. First of all, we can't see you in the audience, and you can see us, but we can't see you. The only people that we can see are each other as panelists. So we're going to be monitoring the Q&A when we fire up the Q&A time. Just feel free to put some questions in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that, and we'll get those questions to our panelists. Again, we're recording, so this will be up on the website probably tomorrow. And so if anybody missed it, or if you know somebody who's not here, just let them know they can access this on the CHS guidance website. So we're super excited to have a great panel with you. We have 3 college admissions folks with us. So Nicole Curvin from Middlebury, and Moses Murphy from UVM, and Brandon Kennedy from Castleton. And then Liam Danaher from VSAC, who joins us at all of the parent nights he can make it to, which is really helpful. And then we've got 2 students, Alex Daniel and Colby Cushing, to talk about their experience, and Norma Daniel to talk about her experience as a parent of guiding a student through this process. So a pretty great panel, and they're going to cover all the bases for you in terms of everything that you need to know as you work your way through this exciting venture of college admissions. So we'll just have everybody go through, and I'm gonna actually do it from my screen. And so since I don't know what the order of operations is on your screens at home, so everybody's going to do a little quick intro, who they are, and a little bit of their story, and then we'll get right to Q&A. So Nicole, why don't you lead us off?
Great. Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting us into your homes to have a conversation about the college search. I am Nicole Curvin. I'm the Dean of Admissions at Middlebury here in Middlebury, Vermont. We are a small private liberal arts institution, highly selective in the admissions process. And there are a couple of signature things that I think students know about us, including our environmental studies program. We created the first program of its kind in 1965. It has 13 different tracks within it. So sustainability is central to the mission of the college, global connectedness. And so we have 31 programs in 18 different countries around the world where our students study abroad and participate in foreign languages. We teach 10 foreign languages, including Portuguese and Italian and Arabic. And so students find a wealth of experience, not just in language study, but international and global studies as well. Also important to know that we have 48 programs and majors. So in the liberal arts, it includes the humanities, it includes the sciences, and certainly for students who are looking at pre-professional programs like business or the sciences in terms of medical science, remember that small places are good to study and do research. And so we have terrific facilities for students to focus in the sciences and do independent research or work alongside our faculty members. We also have pretty small classes. So average class size is about 20 students. And we have been fortunate to bring everybody back to campus this year. We had a successful fall semester bringing students back to campus, and took a brief remote time out for our January term. And now we'll be welcoming students back in the next week or so to campus. And so we have pivoted to both in-person and hybrid types of courses, and are looking forward to virtual connections with students going forward. We're not allowing campus visitors at this point. So I look forward to answering questions and hope to reassure you about the college process and give you the support that you need as you're thinking about embarking on this path. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole. Moses.
Mr. Hall, thank you for having me here this evening, and thank you, all of you in the audience, for being here. My name is Moses Murphy, Senior Associate Director for Undergraduate Admissions. The parts of my job that I guess are most relevant to this conversation this evening is that I oversee sort of our operations, which is the behind the scenes processing of application materials and application data. I oversee the application review process, which isn't, of course, to say that I read all the applications, but make sure that certain benchmarks are being met and that the goals set forth by the administration, the board of trustees are being hit. And then I oversee the data and the technology that we use to do those two things: read applications and then process application materials and data. I've been working at UVM now for, it sounds really weird to say it out loud, it'll be 17 years on July 1 this summer. And very much enjoy the fact that I get to exclusively work with students in the state of Vermont, and more specifically in Chittenden County, and then a little bit of northern Addison County, so like Virgins and Middlebury. It very much appreciate being able to speak with prospective students, particularly this time of year where I know all of my colleagues are buried in admissions committee and we're reading apps, and I have committee at 8 tonight that will be diving into more applications. So it's nice tonight to kind of reset and speak to all of you who are beginning this process. I hope that you all know that University of Vermont is the flagship land grant university for the state of Vermont. We have in any given year either just under or just over 10,000 undergraduate students. When you factor in the medical college and our graduate college, we have around 13,000 students on campus. We offer over 100 different majors, 250 clubs and organizations, Division I athletics, and our majors are housed in 7 different schools and colleges, which is not unusual for a university. And when you apply to the University of Vermont, you don't just apply generally, you have to pick one of these 7 schools and colleges, each of which have different requirements and enrollment goals and things of that nature. And I can talk more about that should there be questions along those veins. We have, the state's only medical college located in the center of our campus. The state's only level 1 trauma hospital also located in the center of our campus. And so I think that our students really enjoy the ability to engage in experiential learning, not only in the medical field, and there's so many students who are pre-med or nursing and things of that nature, but you can think if you're a psych major or a med lab science major, the access and the opportunity that provides, and of course being located in Burlington serves us well in providing students with experiential learning opportunities. I'm glad that all of you are here. I think so much about what makes the college search process and the college application process stressful for families can be made so much easier by educating yourself about the process. And that's why I think all of us are here tonight. I'm obviously willing to answer questions specific to UVM, but also want to serve as a resource, as I'm sure my colleagues do as well, to just answer general questions that would be applicable whether or not you're applying to any of our schools. I think that we have advice that will help you in these unusual times. You can't visit many campuses like Middlebury. We're not allowing students, prospective students on our campus. We've just announced that we'll be extending our test optional policy for the next 2 cycles. So for those of you who are juniors or sophomores, you will not be required to submit standardized testing, which I'm sure invites questions. But I think all of us are here to provide you with just information and try to make this process a little bit easier. And I know that it's not very easy right now. And I think all of us are here to try to help you out. So should you have those questions, I know I'm happy to answer them, but I know my colleagues are as well. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Moses. Brandon, why don't you go next?
Thank you all for allowing me to join the panel tonight. It's great to see our panelists, and I'm sure the crowd looks wonderful as well too. My name's Brandon Kennedy. I'm one of the Associate Directors of Admission at Castleton University. I've been at Castleton since I graduated in 2014 in the admissions office. And part of my job and my position is to oversee the enrollment for our Northern Vermont families. So from every student north of Addison County, I get to work with you. So I will be all of your admission counselor should you choose to apply to Castleton. So it's great to get to chat with you all tonight. Castleton University is one of your state colleges. So I hope that you all know that as well. We are the southernmost state college in Vermont that's funded by the state of Vermont, part of the Vermont State College system. We're located in Castleton, Vermont, which is about an hour and a half south of you all tonight. We have just over 1,800 undergraduate students. With our graduate population, we have about 2,000 students full-time. We offer 75 different programs of study. Most popular programs would be education, nursing, business, our laboratory sciences, so biology, pre-med tracks, things like that. And we also offer 28 Division III varsity sports. So if you're interested in being a competitive athlete, Castleton has some options for most students to try out for. We have a pretty robust student life, and most students actually live on our campus. And if you're looking for a small school, we can really provide you with a lot of activity. Just like my colleagues, I can certainly appreciate all of your journey right now with the college search. This is a stressful time, and I'm sure very overwhelming. I'm sure a lot of you are eager to try to get onto campuses and visit as many as you can. Join us for virtual events. A lot of our events are happening virtually this spring. We are excited to be able to welcome Vermont families. It's very restricted, so call us if you would like to try to take a campus tour, but right now it's pretty limited. But we're eager to work with you all and make sure that this process is as stress-free as it possibly can be, especially given this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Norma. I think you're muted.
Sophomore, and the college process was not nearly as stressful as anticipated. So I hope that some of the stress and fears are alleviated after this chat tonight with all of you. Hope we can give some helpful hints.
And I'm Alex Dangio. I'm a Colchester graduate of 2020, and I'm currently enrolled at St. Michael's College with a dual major in primary ed and economics. And I'm really excited to be on the board again. I was in Colby's position last year, and I'm excited to let people know what that college process is like.
Thank you both. All right, CFC, you're next.
All right, yeah. My name is Colby Cushing. I'm a senior here at CHS, and I have actually already made my decision. I will be going to St. Michael's College next fall. I will be majoring in neuroscience on the pre-med track with minors in chemistry and biology. But yeah, so I'm very eager to answer as many questions as possible. I started my college application very early. And I know a lot about it, so I would love to answer as many questions as possible.
All right, thank you. And our good friend Liam, who joins us as often as he can.
Hi, everybody. My name is Liam Danaher, coming to you from my basement in Colchester, so not very far away at all. Happy to be here. I work at VSAC, so traditionally in the roundabout Winooski, but for quite a while now from my home. My role at VSAC as an outreach counselor is to serve students and communities. That looks different for individuals in different schools. At Colchester, school-based resource, so really anyone who wants to know anything about the career and college process, and specifically the financial aid piece, which I'm guessing some of you might be interested in. That's an area I definitely feel like I specialize in. I'm also a lifetime Vermonter, first-gen college grad. I had my bachelor's from, keeping it going, St. Mike's, and my master's from UVM. So I'd love to talk about those schools, but also all the other world-class institutions we have in our little state and beyond. And I'm glad to be here. And the financial piece can be really overwhelming, and it's in small, incremental, intentional steps. It does not have to be. So that's partially why I'm here, to answer any of the money questions. So also congrats on making your choice, Colby.
All right, thank you, Liam. So friends, I'm going to ask the first question, and you can just let anybody shout out who wants to answer it. But our juniors who are here tonight are in the process of registering for their classes for next year. And I know that's always a question that students have, and they want to know what you're looking for. So when you're thinking about, when you're talking to a student who is a junior picking their senior year courses, what is your recommendation to them in terms of making those selections?
I can go first if you guys want, that's fine. I would recommend to, any junior that's trying to select their schedule for next year is to work really closely with your school counselor and talk about your goals. If you're looking at a really selective institution, make sure that you're having it, or really any institution, I guess, for that matter, make sure you have a challenging senior year. More and more often, colleges and universities are looking at senior coursework and the courses that you're selecting for senior year. So make sure that while as tempting as it can be to have a nice light senior year where you get to leave at noon every day, we like to see you have a full schedule with core academic courses. So math, science, English, social science, humanities, if you can. Take some elective credits. I encourage all Vermont students to look into, if you have some free time in your schedule, look into some dual enrollment credit with CCV or at any of the other, colleges in the state that offer dual enrollment. That's a great way to get some college credit under your belt without diving headlong into it, like an early college experience or something like that. But make sure that you're, really intentional with the courses that you select because colleges are looking at it, and we look at your transcripts for the most part as a cumulative transcript, and we want to see progression every year that we can. So that would be my piece of advice for you. And have fun with the schedule too. Make sure you have some fun into senior year.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that you're working towards a long-term goal. And so picking courses in your senior year is also about preparing yourself for going off to college and being ready to start in your first year at college and feel like you've done the work that you need to be prepared for the courses and the way in which you're approaching being a college student. And so thinking about, the depth that you have in your senior year is really important, but also think about that sort of long range place that you're heading. It's not just about, this one year. It's also about, if you're really someone who's interested in a particular discipline, think about really reaching the top of that particular area. Find the hardest class so that you're ready to take that on at college as well.
And I would, and again, part of this is where my headspace is with final decision making and where our decisions are right now. But I would say also, for us at UVM, and I don't know, Nicole, if you would agree, but we're kind of going through this test optional thing for the first time. And I think that in lieu of submitting standardized test scores, which were always just part of a holistic review process, they never carried the day or anything like that. It was always your 4-year record that mattered most. But in lieu of standardized testing, I think strength of schedule really matters. And particularly at a school like Colchester, where you have a lot of really advanced coursework available to you, I wouldn't encourage you to take on more than you can handle. I wouldn't encourage you to take the most advanced courses in subject areas where you don't have a strength. But what we are finding is that strength of schedule is mattering even more in this environment without standardized testing that either, again, even in normal times kind of reinforce what we thought or, in some cases could be excused, low testing as an example being excused away by a number of factors. But without sort of that uniformed barometer, when you're looking at seniors who are just kind of taking what they need to do to graduate, it's really hard to make offers of admission in those cases. And I know that we're all navigating very difficult times, but you really want to think about your senior schedule through the lens of setting yourself apart, because what we're trying to do in our evaluation is not only determine who's capable. The reality is we have more capable students in our applicant pool than we have room for. And so we're trying to make these distinctions between all the students who are capable, who are the ones that are most competitive, and oftentimes strength of schedule and curricular rigor I'm finding, again, as I navigate this test optional landscape for the first time, the strength of schedule really matters. In addition to all the other components that make up your candidacy, whether it be extracurricular activities, which of course are limited in these times, your letters of recommendation, your essay, the thing you can control is fit to major. So that is to say, challenging yourself in subject areas that are tied to what you want to pursue later in life as you go into your college career. But just generally, when you think about distinguishing yourself from a competitive standpoint, schedule is one way you can do that. And that's one thing you can control. You can't control that you don't have these extracurricular opportunities available to you. You can't control that you can't sit for an SAT, but you can control what you take the next year. And I'm finding that it really is like a tipping point on these borderline cases. Who are the students who are persevering and showing sort of some stick-to-itiveness and again, just perseverance by taking these difficult schedules and doing well in them. And it's really mattering. And I don't, it's the most honest answer I can give is that we're in the throes of doing it right now. And you see some students who are taking the English they need to graduate and whatever other electives they might need. And that's basically it. And that's not what other students are doing. And so in our competitive applicant pools, scheduling really, really matters.
Super, thank you. Hey folks, just a reminder, throw some questions in the Q&A and we'll get them out to the panelists. We've got questions to last all night long if you want us to be doing the questions, but we'd rather hear from you in the audience. So go ahead and throw some questions in the Q&A and we'll get them out. But Ms. Pastore is ready to keep things rolling.
And I'll just ask Alex and Colby, do either of you have any thoughts on picking courses for senior year after having done this now and looking at it in a different context?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely just knowing yourself and finding that healthy balance of a good challenge and not overworking yourself. I know from my own experience, I was going into my senior year thinking about taking a third AP course. And I sat back and thought about it for a while and realized, that might be a little too much. I might get overwhelmed and maybe not perform as well in the other classes that I want to do well in. And so I ended up dropping that other AP course and picked up one that I can't quite remember, but one that was of interest to me and a little bit still outside my comfort zone. So yeah, it's definitely a good challenge. And you just kind of got to spread around what you think you might be interested in, because then that prepares you for what you might want to major in later on. If you can dip your toes in as much as you can, as early as you can, then you're much better off knowing what you want to do later on. And just because I've already switched up my major, I went from secondary ed with a minor in statistics to primary ed and economics. So I've kind of realized that, some stuff plays to my strengths, some don't. And so the sooner you can get ahead on that, the better.
Absolutely. And to piggyback off of that, I kind of went into my senior year with a lot of unknowns. So I didn't know what my schedule was going to be like. I didn't know if we were going to do the 4x4 or whether we were just going to have the same exact kind of schedule. And so knowing that, I knew that I wanted to go to St. Mike's, and I knew that they had this thing called first class. So I knew that I was going to have the opportunity to, if I really could, challenge myself later on in the year. And so it just happened to work out that both the APs that I signed up for would kind of be in the same exact schedule, but and I'm taking them right now. So, I kind of passed up on first class at St. Mike's, and, it is what it is. And I'm unable to do that. But at the same time, I'm able to kind of stick with school here and put my full focus in and just kind of enjoy, but also challenge myself in my last semester at CHS. And last spring, when I was kind of going through the scheduling process, I could not have had a better time with Miss Pastore, just kind of going through and seeing which courses would really challenge me and which courses would help me kind of get into St. Mike's and get into just what I wanted to do with my life. So yeah.
Thanks, Colby.
Just to add on, you reminded me about first class. I did take first class through St. Mike's. And a bunch of colleges offer courses like that. If that's something you're interested in, I'd say if they offer classes that seem interesting to you, which they have just an amazing amount of classes that you wouldn't think they might offer. I took a first class in history of rock music, which was very interesting and played to, something I enjoy very much. I listen to a lot of that music. So that course was really interesting for me, a lot of fun. And if that's the route you want to take, that's definitely one that is worth it, because you can get college credit for that ahead of time, and it can give you a good head start going into your freshman year.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Moses, you brought up a point about the shift to test optional, and I don't know if the juniors are as aware of this as they might be, but because of COVID, so many schools went test optional, and we're seeing the emails flooding our offices now that schools are extending their test optional policies, which leads you as admissions folks to look at other things. And one of the big things that is well within the student's control and everybody has a lot of questions about is the essay. Would you all mind giving your thoughts on the essay?
Certainly. And I want to stress that standardized testing, and I think my colleagues would agree, standardized testing, was never a super big deal when it came to this evaluation process. I don't want people to take away the fact that, being test optional is somehow this huge game changer. But it was, as you think about it, sort of this one uniform barometer, like I said earlier, but with its own, problems as it relates to evaluating a student's skill set. I don't think that it has ever evaluated properly for all students their ability to succeed in the future. So I don't want to overstate the importance of it. But in its absence, you figure the other components of your application just take on that much more weight. And the components that make up an application are, the strength of your schedule, your grades, your extracurricular activities, your letters of recommendation, and then Mr. Hall, to your point, the essay. And I think that the thing about an essay is that it provides you with this one opportunity, not the only opportunity, but this very obvious opportunity to tell us something authentic about yourself. And I think that that's really the key, is authenticity. I'm often asked, what's the best essay topic? And I mean, it really matters, like who's reading it. It can vary, you know what I mean? But the essays that I think are most helpful are the ones that are telling us something about you that we can't gather in any other way. So again, we have recommendations, we have extracurricular activities. There's a lot of information we know about you already. So this is your opportunity to authentically speak to us. And we read it. It's oftentimes, I think my colleagues would agree, kind of like our favorite part, because it's something other than like a transcript that we get to look at, or the Common App, or whatever else. And it's just a way to distinguish yourself from other people in the applicant pool, to tell us your story. And the topic for me matters less. The essays that have meant the most to me in committee are the ones that I really feel are authentic and that are giving me insight into what a student is going to bring to my community or add to our campus, or in some cases explain something that needs to be explained about their history or their experiences. But authenticity to me is what matters most. We use it to evaluate your writing skills and your writing style to a certain extent. They're oftentimes proofread heavily and edited heavily, and not often are they wildly poorly written or anything like that. So I think that you have essays that kind of, they're fine and they don't move the needle, but then you have essays where you really are like, wow, that's something that matters to us on this committee. And so my advice to you is to, start thinking about it early. The essay prompts are out there. You can do multiple drafts. I think it's good. Obviously, it's important to have it proofread by other people. You obviously want it to be your own work, but it is not an afterthought. It's something that I think many of us spend a lot of time looking at. And I also appreciate that it's probably the most stressful part of filling out the application, which is otherwise basically a form that you're filling out, right? The only part about it that's difficult is the essay. And the best way to alleviate any stress you have about it is to get on it early. You can look up the prompts, and right now you could log on, create an account with the Common App, and start thinking about it and just approach it in steps. Brainstorm, jot down a couple ideas, do an outline, have someone check it out, maybe do a first draft. And as long as you approach it early and methodically, I think that, you'll find that when it comes to clicking, submit on the application, you'll feel better about it, having approached it in that way early on, as opposed to kind of, putting it off to the side because you don't want to deal with it and doing it at the last minute.
And I will say from my end, Alex, I remember your essay like totally, right? Do you mind just giving a quick snippet of your essay? I could do this, 'cause I remember it that much. But do you mind just talking about what you said? Because I think that was really like what you talked about, because that was something, just like Moses said, that they wouldn't have known about you had you not written about it.
Yeah, so I really had two main ideas going into what I wanted to write my essay about. One was about where I work, and one was about, my sport, with lacrosse and soccer. And I talked to Dela, my AP Lang teacher, and she said, a lot of athletes tend to talk about sports, and you kind of want to make yourself stand out a little bit more. So I work for Colchester Parks and Rec, and so I wrote about a really strong connection I made with a child, and how special that was to me and to him over the past few years. And so that kind of made me stand out, and that it matched up well with my wanting to go into the education field. And I can say that I have proof that colleges do look at these and they do notice, because in my acceptance letter from St. Mike's, there was a note where they mentioned what they thought about my essay and how it connected to, they noticed that, okay, you not only did you choose this path to go academically, but we can tell that you're connected to it and you're really driven. And so whatever that happens to be for you, if you write about wanting to pursue something in the medical field, and you're going in as a bio major, like they notice that stuff, and they'll let you know how they feel about it. And it's really cool to see on your acceptance letter too.
Cool. Thank you. And I can see Colby smiling over there. Colby, do you have any insight into the essay process?
Started as soon as possible. And so I started my application last spring of my junior year. And that also was with the help of Miss Pastore. I never would have been able to deal with it if I hadn't started it last spring. So started as soon as possible. But on the essay part, I also, I'm going to St. Mike's. So St. Mike's also did the same exact thing for me. They gave me a little note that said, just reassuring me that this is clearly like the path for me, whatever. But like, I wrote mine about my past and what like academically has just driven me. And I did that through a saying that my aunt said to me once about starfish, and just like saving each starfish on a seaboard. And yeah, it was a long process for me, because I like to perfect things, and I decided that I was going to write my final draft and my first draft. But besides that point, you should never do that, by the way. Never ever do that. When you are writing, just word vomit. Miss Albright will tell you to word vomit. But yeah, just write it as slow as possible and perfect it as slow as possible, and start like now. But yeah, not to stress anybody out, but yeah, start it as soon as possible.
Thank you both. That was awesome.
And I'm curious, because a couple of years ago, I worked with a student on his essay. And when he got his acceptance to Clarkson, they actually did have a handwritten note that referenced his essay as well. So clearly, that seems to be a trend and I think it goes to that larger point, and Nicole, Brandon, feel free to jump in, but that Moses mentioned, that thinking about how an applicant fits into the community of the particular school they're applying to. And I think that's what drives you folks as admissions folks to write that handwritten note saying, hey, it seems like you're in the right place with us.
And I have just a couple of things I want to tie back in for, well, Alex, just to jump back in, because you were talking about how you took advantage of a really cool opportunity last year as a senior, and you were talking about like kind of exploring your interest, and so you want to talk a little bit about like for picking classes next year, what you did with your mentoring and kind of how that helped you and helped you decide kind of where you wanted to go in the field.
Yeah, so actually it started kind of back in my sophomore year. I worked in the strategic classrooms with math students, just as something, to pick up that I was interested in math, and, I've worked with children like my whole life. So I figured, maybe I could try it out at the high school level and see if I can kind of connect with people in the same way. And then I really didn't start thinking about education as a career path until like my junior, senior year. And that's when I did mentorships. I did shadowing for a freshman social studies classroom and English classroom. And then I also tried it out at the middle school level in a social studies classroom. And it's just it gave me perspective on kind of the 3 age groups that go along with education. And so I could figure out which one best suits me for my career path specifically. And so you can do that with a bunch of different things, whatever your major happens to be. If you want to take certain internships or you want to shadow some places, you can just probably email or call them and they'd love to have you. However that fits into what you want to do in your future. And that's how you can, figure out, what I want to do and what I want to do later on. And so you don't feel stuck, because that's definitely a big thing. Is for a while I wanted to be a business major. And I think if I went in now being a business major, not having done that shadowing, I would feel stuck and not know, what to do. Because I'm looking at, my roommate is a business major, and that's not something that interests me too much. And so it's good to know now that with that stuff in my back pocket, that I know what I want to do, and I'm not kind of stuck and trying to dig myself out of a hole.
That's awesome. And Alex, when he was looking just right. You were looking at Bentley. You were like you said, before you did the shadowing and trying some stuff, you were like, I want Bentley. It's what I want for business. And then like you shifted, and that kind of, if you don't mind, I'll pull in your mom to talk about that process, Norma, because you were kind of you were on the sidelines to that one.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to be silent on the sidelines. I'll use your line. When you feel like your child is choosing a major that maybe doesn't suit their personality or that you can see them doing, but you just have to let them figure it out on their own. It took Alex a while, I guess, to decide it on his own, even though plenty of teachers were telling him, his employer was telling him. We tried not to tell him what we thought, best suited his personality. And all the schools that we toured and that he looked at were all business schools, and most of them didn't have education majors at them. So we did a lot of tours. We incorporated them into trips that we already had planned as a family or for sporting events. So we toured a lot of schools. And then when he decided he wanted to be an education major, we kind of had to start over again, because a lot of those schools were then out of the running.
Yeah, and I can say that it was very last minute. I could admit that. It was like the fall of my senior year. I was like, you know what? I don't really want to do this. I want to go in a completely different direction. And so it can be a little scary, feeling like you have to start from scratch if you end up changing your mind like I did. Hopefully, if you do, it's earlier. But yeah, I'd say just go with your gut. If something feels right, then just go with it. Whether if you feel some sort of stigma behind it, or you're thinking, I don't know, because that came into play a lot for me. Was, maybe I won't make as much money, maybe I won't feel as successful with myself. But you just, at the end of the day, you just got to think about what best suits you and what you'll have the most fun with, and what you'll enjoy with the rest of your life. Because like I said earlier, you don't want to feel stuck, and you want to do something that you love. And so that's why I ended up changing my mind, and I feel like at least right now it's for the better.
Thank you. That's great.
Friends in the audience, just a reminder, Q&A, throw some questions in there. We would love to hear from you. Again, we'll just keep going all night long, but this is really for you and answering your specific questions. I'm going to divert since I'm talking and just say, admissions folks, and actually even for our student and parent guests, because the spring, I know that you were already kind of done as a senior last year, Alex and Norma, but I'm curious about how should our juniors manage the college visit process when there aren't really visits? I know, Brandon, you said you have super limited visits, UV and Middlebury not really having visits, and not all virtual tours are the same. So what's your advice for students managing that process in the current circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to remember everything that people have just said about knowing yourself and really thinking about what's important to you about the college process. And so as you're looking at colleges and universities in different places, knowing that you maybe won't get there physically for a bit, to spend some time looking at virtual tours, spend some time looking at other videos that colleges have on their websites. It's important to think about the ways in which there's content on social media, so Instagram, Twitter, even there are often little snippets of video or things that are happening on campus right now. So you may find yourself understanding what a lab space is like right now with students on campus, or an experiment that a faculty member is going to be talking about in a class. I do think there are creative ways for students to get to know a campus culture through the virtual experiences. I also think it's important to think about the relationships that you'll build at a particular school. And so you may want to reach out to a student at that institution, or you might want to reach out to an academic department. You might want to reach out to academic advising areas and ask questions about how they support students in that process. If you're interested in sports, if you're interested in theater, there are ways to ask questions, but also to get some content back about what it looks like in your theater on campus, or what productions are you working on right now in the virtual space. I know at Middlebury, every particular academic discipline is getting really, really creative about content. And so a couple of weeks ago, I was a judge for our first year students, and they have a speech contest that they do every year. And so I got to interact with our new first year students who I hadn't seen much of, since most of us staff wise haven't been on campus. And they did a 2 to 3 minute conversation. And, we did some judging at the end of it. And then they have this big grand finale competition that happens. So there are little ways in which you can engage and plug in to the life of a college, and it doesn't just stop at the virtual tour.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, we've got a couple other questions to ask, but just to follow up on that, we have Colchester students at each of your institutions right now, and we chat with them from time to time. And one of the things I think is interesting with the student that I just had a conversation with the other day was access to their professors and the kinds of extra things that get to happen when you have that access to your professors, which I think is maybe that, something you can't answer on a tour, or you can't answer on a tour, but definitely something interesting. And I think for Colchester students, that's a particularly important element. And Alex and Colby, you could talk about that too, because relationships is what we're all about at CHS. And so I think for students going off to college, they're kind of expecting that that's what they want in their college experience, is to have that access.
Yeah, I would say, to kind of go along the lines of, trying to explore campuses and colleges in this virtual time, it's kind of exciting in a way, because our faculty and our staff are almost more accessible to students. We all are on Zoom. Our schedules are maybe a little bit more flexible rather than having to run between labs and classes. So I know that our faculty at Castleton are more than happy to jump on a Zoom with me and a, prospective student and family to have a conversation about the program. And, that builds that relationship. I think, going to a small school in Vermont, as far as high school, Colchester's a little bit larger, but it's still a relatively small school. And when you go to look at smaller institutions that, Vermont has to offer, and potentially even out-of-state schools have to offer, the relationships that you're going to build on these campuses are huge. And I think during this COVID time, relationships are just as important, if not more so important. So connecting virtually, we all want to help you connect. And I think, us in the admissions office understand that it's really hard to not be able to visit a campus. It's a very different feeling, when you're actually walking up the hill on a college campus versus, the virtual tour is kind of gliding you up the hill. It feels different. And we understand that, but we're going to try to do everything we can to make you experience what you need to make a well-informed decision. I'm constantly telling the students that I work with that I want you to choose to come to Castleton when you know that it's the right fit for you. And if that means that I have to Zoom with you and your mom and your dad or your family, your support team, and I physically walk you around campus on my phone, I'm happy to do it. And I think most of us are more than happy to do those types of things if we can. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask your questions that you have. If you need to see the inside of a lab, let us know. We'll try to get you in there if we can in any capacity.
And I think it's also important to mention the fact that, clearly the most ideal way to try to gauge fit with an institution would be to step foot on our campus and meet with people in person. And we wish you could as well. Trust me, it would only make our jobs easier. Particularly the schools represented here are all beautiful, and just we would love to have you on campus. But times dictate that we cannot. But that being said, our virtual offerings, we've put a lot of time into those, and they will give you insight relative to determining fit. It's not as good as it could be, but trust me, it will give you insight that is very important as you think about this decision. And the other thing I think that's important to mention is that you want to think about it as a way of demonstrating interest. It's one thing to poke around our website. We don't know you're poking around on our website, but we have these virtual opportunities for you that you can go to and you can sign up. And we know that you've signed up. We know that you attended. And not all schools use demonstrated interest in this country, but a lot of them do. And so I think it's important that as you go through this process, that you sign up for these official virtual opportunities that are available to you, not only because they are helpful in determining fit, but because they indicate to the Office of Admissions your level of interest. And I think that is strategically important for you to think about. Again, recognizing that not all of us are going to formally use that in our decision-making process, but some people will. And I think that's important for you to know.
Can I offer a quick anecdote? Just couldn't help but notice we have four, including St. Mike's here, really remarkable local Vermont institutions on the call tonight. And I've worked with students for about 10 years, and so frequently pre-COVID and even post, the specialists are being locked in the house for so long. The discussion is anywhere but here, anywhere but Vermont. And I think it just is a good reminder, like given the current climate that we are existing in, and also from an affordability perspective, the schools in Vermont, these schools represented today here on this call, work incredibly hard to make the education experience that they're offering students affordable. And I really encourage students to at least apply to one of the schools in the state, because they're incredible, world-class, and all of them work incredibly hard to build bridges of affordability for their students. So just a plug for the schools on this call and for the schools that are not, but also in our Vermont State College system, and well worth a look, even for students who want to be somewhere warm in February like we all do.
So we have a question in the chat. I just want to get that out there. And we have three different schools represented here, and everybody is test optional. And the question in the chat is, and I've seen a lot of emails and a lot of statements on college websites talking about test optional. Like, what does test optional really mean? Is it a test optional wink, wink, but if you send us the scores, it's going to help you? Is there a pressure to send those test scores even though you're test optional? what is it? What's the straight dope on test optional? That's the question in the chat that folks want to hear.
Yeah, I think, as the huge volume of schools was moving to test optional starting in last spring, I think the anxiety level heightened, and I think the intention of institutions was to alleviate the stress around access to standardized tests, knowing and watching what was happening on the news and watching what was happening in schools. And so Middlebury opted to be test optional for the next 3 years as a pilot. My hope is that we'll move to make that a permanent step. And we did a lot of thinking about what that means. And we don't put pressure on students to take the SAT or ACT if it's not something that they choose to do. We don't ask students who took the test to submit it in any wink, wink kind of way. This is part of the choices you make as an applicant about the pieces of your application that you think will have impact in terms of the conversation about what things you bring and what information you want to share with us. And so in our admissions office, we started as soon as we made the announcement to go back and look at applications and review them both with and without testing so that we had some practice around the conversation about what this really meant for our process. And as Moses said earlier, it really meant really spending as much time on your 4-year high school experience and not spending the time on one particular testing date, and looking at the holistic view of the information that a student is submitting to us. I think, test optional schools, that means that it's your choice in or out. You may find some institutions where a larger majority is submitting testing. In our applicant pool this year, it was about 50-50, students who opted to provide scores for us and students who did not. And so, I think that institutions have been really thoughtful about this, and our intention from Middlebury's standpoint was that we were trying to remove an obstacle that we felt like was unnecessary at a time where you should really be just thinking about your safety and health. And that was the priority around the conversation about being test optional. I also think it's the reason why many institutions are now saying that they're going to extend that policy beyond just 1 year, because there are many factors that are happening in students and family lives. And the priority should be completing high school and thinking about your college future going forward.
Cool.
Very thorough answer. Thanks, Nicole. That was awesome. Yeah.
All right. Looks like we have another question in the chat here. Is there any way to get a sense in advance what kind of merit-based financial assistance might be offered at any given school you might be thinking of applying to? Having a sense of this seems like a key factor in deciding which handful of schools to apply to. Great question.
I think that's going to vary from institution to institution. For example, at Castleton, you could certainly give me a call and we'll have an in-depth conversation about what your academic rigor is like, what your extracurriculars might be, and we can speak hypothetically. I know that financial aid teams and admission scholarship and grants committees, are constantly meeting about this, and things can change from year to year. Typically, they don't change drastically, but they can change year to year. So for the most part, as a junior, most institutions are going to speak hypothetically to you to give you a kind of a ballpark estimate. If you jump on most schools' websites, they're going to have a range or some sort of scholarship table that will say, if you have X academic performance, this is going to translate to, roughly this scholarship. What I would encourage you to do, though, is just, reach out to an admission counselor directly and, try to connect with that school, especially, Moses mentioned demonstrated interest. This is a great way to, get connected with a school and say, hey, I'm really interested. I'm already considering costs. I'm trying to understand and make sure that it's going to be a good fit for me. And, we're more than happy to have a conversation with you. But I think it's going to vary from year to year, and it's going to vary from institution to institution. But I think, most of us want to be as transparent with students and families as we can be.
I would also put a plug in for the net price calculator, which is something all of us are required by federal law to make available to students. It's a sort of an estimate of, what it might cost to attend. I want to highlight that it's an estimate, particularly as many of us shifted on the fly to test optional. Some of the infrastructure behind the scenes that helps provide those estimates, it made it probably a little less accurate than it would have been in other years. I think the takeaway is that, for many of us, very few students, and this is the point of the net price calculator, very few students are paying that giant sticker price that you see that like freaks you out. Almost nobody pays that. So between merit-based scholarships, which are money that you don't have to pay back, that we give you based on your academic credentials, need-based grants, again, money that you don't need to pay back, federal loans that are low interest, you are able to, in many cases, bring down that sticker price that probably makes many of the parents in the audience pale in the face when you look at them. Know that as you're exploring colleges, particularly as a junior, be thinking about fit, be thinking about academic fit, personal fit, and make sure that you think about the idea of reach and safety, not only from the standpoint of your chances of being admitted, but also your chances of affording. But don't let sticker price, steer you away from an institution out of hand. Because, all of us, if we threw out our stats, you'd see that all of us spend tens of millions of dollars in student aid to make this process and this experience affordable to the best of our abilities. And so I think the net price calculator is one way you can kind of get a little sample of that. But don't rule out too many schools. Don't rule out really any schools right now because of price, because there's just a whole lot of factors that haven't played out yet. And just keep your options open would be my advice.
And Moses, do you mind talking about the catamount commitment? Just to give a little plug on that, because it's
certainly. It feels a bit shameless, but yes, at UVM, any Pell eligible Vermonter. So Pell eligible is a federal program that's based on financial need. As you might imagine, it's those students who are most needy. But any Pell eligible Vermonter can attend the University of Vermont without paying any tuition or fees. And it beyond that has sort of wraparound programming, such that you have a mentor when you step on campus. It's a cohort program. So a way to sort of lessen the cost of attending UVM. It's specific to Vermonters, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but it is specific to Vermonters. So a way to, again, try to make that an option for students who have the highest level of need.
thank you. That's
And
awesome. Yeah.
Moses, just so it's not completely shameless there, I will throw in there, Nicole, I'll let you talk about this, is that a student that I have at Middlebury right now who was Pell eligible is paying not very much. Middlebury does an excellent job with students with financial needs. And, of course, Castleton is a state school and very approachable in terms of affordability.
Yeah, I think it's important that you're looking at the different range of institutions, and Middlebury doesn't offer merit scholarships. We're all need-based. And so we're trying to fund students who've demonstrated to us that they have financial need in the form of grants and some low interest loans as well. I think that, I want to just echo what Moses said about having this conversation as soon as possible about affordability and expectations that you're setting for your child in the process of looking at colleges. And so that if there are real limits and you're really thinking about how much of an investment you're willing to make in college, that you talk about this now and not wait until you have decisions in front of you. You've been admitted to several places and now you're sort of working backwards in terms of the aid process. Because I think, you really want to set your student up for success in this process. And it can be incredibly stressful, even just putting together a college list. but not really making sure that you're having that conversation early can be a disappointment for students. And so, it is a difficult conversation, certainly can admit that, but it's an important conversation as you're really thinking about all of the things that will make a student successful. And certainly finding an affordable option allows a student to be first and foremost a student and not be stressed out or anxious about their ability to pay or their ability to be successful over the course of 4 years as well.
Yeah, and I would just kind of echo that as well. Think about the 4-year commitment. I oftentimes talk with students about, I want you to, it comes down to fit, right? And trying to find your right fit. And I want you to come to Castleton if today it's affordable for you. And also when you're a senior, the worst thing would be for a student to enroll at an institution that they love, that they've established themselves at, and then they get the first semester bill or the second semester bill, and they have to make the really hard decision to transfer or to withdraw. And, none of us want to see that happen. As admission professionals and as, supporters of students, we want to make sure that you all are going to be successful from the first day you step foot on campus to when you get your diploma with us. And so we try to make sure that students are well informed. I think, to the families in the audience, you're doing a huge first step in this process of, coming to tonight's conversation and hearing about financial aid. And now you've got the wheels turning and you're thinking, okay, we need to start, thinking about this and planning it maybe a little bit more. I also want to plug VSAC, for Vermont students. If you apply for VSAC grants, for VSAC scholarships, that's going to make most institutions in the state really affordable, within striking distance of costs. And, certainly students, you're going to have to take on some debt. You might have to, maybe you don't have to, but most students do. But just be prepared that if you utilize your resources that are out there, state resources, institutional resources, it can be really affordable and quite obtainable for students to attend a school in Vermont.
And I would just like to say to the parents out there, reiterate what Moses said a few minutes ago, not to be deterred by the sticker price of some of the schools. Alex had his sights set on a very expensive school. We allowed him to apply to the schools that he wanted to that felt like good fits for him. 4 of them were private schools that were very expensive, and only one school was a state school. But when it came down to it, the financial aid packages that were offered to him were comparable pricing at those much more expensive schools. And it turns out he chose one of them, but I just want parents to know that because it has a high price at your first look, don't take it off the list right away. Give it a chance. You never know what you're going to get for a package. Could be pleasantly surprised like we were.
Great advice on that. And thanks, Norma. And Norma, while you're there, you are our next question anyways, while we're waiting for more parents, and family members and students to ask. But do you mind talking about your process as a parent in just supporting Alex throughout this whole process? Like what your tips and suggestions would be, and maybe any lessons that you might have come out of it with.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we learned after the fact was we needed to stick to the timeline that the guidance office provided for us and the VSAC program provides for you. In the VSAC program, I believe it's monthly, the calendar of events that you should kind of keep on your radar to stay on track. And then through guidance, it was even more particular. Each month, there were dates suggested for things. And if you can stay on that timeline, I think it'll really help you to not be overwhelmed and not feel like you're behind or scrambling at the last minute to fill out forms or apply for applications or apply to the schools, finish your essay, things like that. Alex pretty much was self-motivated for those things. We didn't really have to ride him to stay on track, so that was super helpful. But that would be my best advice, especially to the students. Keep yourself on the timeline that's given to you. It actually really, really works.
That's a great one. Thank you. And I think one thing that I feel like both Alex and Colby, both of you did, which was awesome. You made regular appointments. I mean, I was the lucky one, in this case here, but I mean, and so you made appointments with me to go over, and this would be for any of you out there watching, to meet with your counselor to really like look at, like, Colby, you were on it for like classes, and like you said, making sure you had everything in a row. And then Alex, you were doing that with colleges with me. I mean, using your resources to really be able to like plan ahead. And I think you both started in like this time in junior year, really actively been like, all right, let's talking about this whole process, which was awesome.
I'd also like to say that Julie took the time to meet with me, separate from meeting with Alex, just to kind of alleviate some of the stress that I had. And I think the guidance department that we have is wonderful. They're so helpful. Just reach out to them by email, by phone, set up a meeting. But I felt really, really confident in the advice that Julie was giving us, and in the timelines that she gave us. And the help that she was giving Alex was completely separate from what she was helping me with on the side.
We have the most helpful and the greatest guidance counselors that you could find anywhere. Like, I don't know how perfect, how Colchester High School got so lucky, but we have 3 of the greatest to ever do it. So yeah, absolutely reach out. And if you ever just have anything to talk about, like life, I do it all the time, not only with them, but also with the secretary, Patty Ward. But they're the best people, like, just period.
Yeah, you can go in there with like the smallest questions you have, whether it's about this process or anything else. I'm pretty sure I went into Ms. Pastori's office and we just set up a small meeting. I just said I had a couple questions, and one of them was just like, how do I know if a college isn't the right fit for me? Even like if I can't get a physical tour, but I just went there and walked around myself. And I'm if I can remember correctly, I'm pretty sure you told me the smallest things can turn you on and off from a college. Maybe you don't like the trees there or the way the buildings look. Even like simple questions like that can honestly like really be a big help, because I then later visited some colleges and realized, there's maybe just this little thing that just isn't for me. And that's how you can eventually help find that perfect fit. And so any questions like that, like, feel free to reach out to these guidance counselors. Like they love getting these questions anyway. So
That's awesome. Yes, we do. Thanks. Thank you both. And in the meantime, in true transparency, I was over here sending an email to Colby because I was thinking we thought it was going to be too overwhelming, as we kept the numbers low with this, but so I said, no, your mom, it's okay not to have your mom. And as I realized, I'm like, this could actually work really nicely. So I emailed him like, you can get your mom if you want. And in the same time, I'm looking and I have an email from somebody, one of the people watching this right now, with an email saying, can we meet with you? So again, I put the plug out there. Please, 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 families, students, like, use us. We love it. It's our thing. And happy to walk you through this whole process. Liam's there as well. And even the college reps, I mean, like, you guys, you're great. If you have questions, ask them directly. They're wonderful. So, but I'll introduce Michelle, not to put you on the spot, but hello, this is Michelle Cushing. Hi.
Everyone.
And Colby's mom, who's been awesome. And Michelle, do you have, Norma just gave some really awesome, just like advice and kind of suggestions. Do you have anything that you want to share as a parent and guardian who, kind of anything that you would say was really helpful in this process?
Gosh, I don't know. I'm sure Norma covered most of it. But I guess what I would say is, there's more of these to come. Go to these, take notes, reach out, ask questions. A timeline can be really helpful of what's due when and how to do it. And if you get stuck, reach out, ask questions. I think that would be my loop. Reach out, ask questions. Yeah, and I think, some of it is just knowing your kiddo and what they need, what they don't need, what they want, even if they're not asking for it, what they don't want, and, kind of responding accordingly with, support or, kind of leaning in, leaning out.
I like that.
Nice.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, so just a question about the timeline was in the chat. So Liam has been dropping all kinds of stuff in the chat. Our quiet but active participant on the panel has been dropping all kinds of stuff in the chat. So, and one of the things he put in there was about the timeline. And of course, all of these presentations that we do, whether they're PowerPoints or videos, they all go up on the guidance website. So that last junior college night #1 that had timeline stuff in it is on our website as a PowerPoint or a Google slideshow, whatever. I want to ask Colby and Alex, you're a little bit removed from it when you come back, but senior year in the fall can be unbelievably stressful because you're starting your senior year, you've got courses, you've listened to the college reps who said, keep your classes going, take a good solid senior year. So now you've got these classes that you want to do well in, and you've got the application process. It can be really, really stressful. What advice do you have for your peers about how to manage that whole process for yourself to keep yourself from, just losing it in the fall?
I would definitely say find a healthy balance. I am very lucky to be on Miss Pastori's group, We Matter Here. And it's just a good, amazing group of kids that we just bounce ideas off of each other about mental health. And so I would definitely say just keeping a very, very, very healthy balance of school and peers and work, sports, all of that. And just knowing that you're going to get through it no matter what. And it's meant to be hard, but it's not meant to be too hard. It's meant to be hard. And so just kind of taking a couple just moments to breathe and to really just know that you're going to get through it. And, my friend personally, he came to me with a lot of I need some help with this. I need some help with that. And, using your friends to really support you and, do the application together or do your classes together, something like that, to really just support each other because it's always great to have a helping hand when you're going through it. So yeah, that's what I would say is keeping a healthy balance and doing it with friends and family.
Yeah, and I'd say, just do it. Just push through the work. Don't, push it out to the last minute. I know that was a bit of a struggle for me. I'd say learn from my mistakes and kind of capitalize on that. I tended to kind of push stuff to the last minute, and it would just snowball and it'd create way more stress than it would just going, piece by piece along the way. And it is very stressful, and you just don't want it to build up any more than it already is. So the sooner you can get ahead of it, the better. And it can be really rewarding in the end because once you're done, you get through that first quarter or second quarter, and you feel really relieved. You worked really hard to make sure that colleges can see what the kind of student you are, and you feel good about it in the end. And I know we talked about kind of the rigor of the schedule earlier, and you want to not take big off times, but at my second half of my senior year, I worked hard enough to the point where I earned being able to leave at noon half the days there. So it's not, again, it's not something you want to try for and be like, oh, I just, I want to blow it off and be able to leave at noon. But it's something you got to work for, and whether that's something you want to choose to do, and just getting it done, not letting it pile up is definitely the key there.
I'd love to just ask also, thank you so much for that. Admissions counselors, in the spirit of asking for help and getting support, would you rather hear a student call or email and ask for support, or would you rather hear from the parent or guardian?
I think that, the student is the one who's going to experience college, and the sooner that you can allow them to ask questions, to follow up with an admissions office, to reach out to one of us, to decide which events they want to attend and when and what fits into their schedule, I think the better off they'll be and the more successful they'll be as college students. We certainly welcome conversation with families with questions that they have. But I think it's really important for students to take the driver's seat, and that, you know, families can be in the passenger seat and provide guidance and support and reminders if need be. But the students really have to start to take that first step towards the independence of being a successful college student. And you won't necessarily have your terrific guidance counselors and your teachers around to kind of nudge you all the time. And so this is one step in that direction. And the college search process can be a great opportunity for a student to figure out, you know, when they need to kind of jump ahead and when they need to ask questions.
And thank you, Nicole. So Colby, I feel like you are an incredible example of doing that. Do you mind just sharing like your experience with St. Mike's and like just your communication with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to say, like, if you are a student that tends to not do things on your own, don't be afraid of doing it. You know, once you really start to learn how to do things on your own, it gets a lot easier as it goes on. So don't be afraid. But as well, I spoke with the wonderful Mike Stefanowitz in my junior year. He is the director of admissions at St. Mike's, and we had a wonderful conversation. I kind of took the lead there, and I kind of decided I wanted to do that on my own. I didn't, you know, have my parents kind of do anything for me there. I really wanted to reach out to him, and I wanted to email him and ask him questions. But what ended up happening was we had a Zoom call for about an hour long, and it was super productive. You know, everything that I had for questions was answered, and you know, I felt very, very, very good in my decision of, you know, St. Mike's is really where I want to be. And I think that a lot of that had to do with the fact that, you know, I didn't really have too much of a parental like hawk, you know, I kind of did it on my own. And, you know, there was no hovering from my parents, and it was all, you know, independent on my own. So, yeah.
And you kept that communication going, right? I mean, that didn't just end at that 1 hour. It was like,
Absolutely.
you'd have questions, you just really showed interest and really like took that initiative.
Yes. Yep.
It's very impressive.
It's awesome. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We are about 10 minutes away from our scheduled end time, and we always like to wrap up with your one piece of advice for those folks who have taken the time to sit through our little presentation tonight. So I won't necessarily call you out in order, but let's think about your one piece of advice for these students as they dive into the process. In the meantime, while people are thinking, I'm just going to say the piece of advice that you got a little bit ago, which was like attend the stuff, right? So everything about this process, we do it, right? So we have nights coming up. We have financial aid nights coming up for your senior year. We have a senior college night where we go through the whole thing and talk about the timeline again. And we have a full comprehensive AT, which this year we did it as webinars, but if we have AT again next year, it'll all be done in AT. So we'll walk you through every step of the way. So attend and take part in all of those things. And I'm seeing our college admissions folks nodding their heads. They have events too. So attend, take part, do those things. All right, friends, take it away. What is your one piece of advice?
I guess I can go first, and my colleagues who I've sat on many panels with before will recognize this, but you know, my advice is that you need to take ownership and you need to stay organized more than anything else. I mean, we've, as institutions, made it probably a little tough on you. We all have different deadlines and requirements and all sorts of things. And so I think that you have to approach this methodically in a way to keep track of all that. And that extends to your email. And I recognize that for many of you students, the email may not be your preferred method of communication, but that's our official means of communicating with you. And I will own the fact that we will bombard you with some an avalanche of marketing materials, but we're going to slip some very important information in to some of those emails. And so, you know, you want to come up with a system to keep track of that. And you know, if you've applied to a school and you haven't heard from them acknowledging the receipt of that application, trust me, something's off. You know, we are always giving you information. We're giving you application status portals for you to track your status, and you want to own that and keep track of that. And the way we do that is through email. And so create a system, whatever system works for you, but to stay organized, to keep your school's requirements and deadlines and everything else separate and understood, and to track your email. Because, you know, next Friday, we're going to release our final decisions. And on Monday, I'm going to get 1,000 calls. Why don't I have a decision? Why don't I have a decision? It's like, well, we texted you, we emailed you, you know what I mean? Over and over again, we're missing your transcript or whatever else it is. So this is your process to own. It's your job to stay organized. And that would be my number one advice to you. It'll save you a lot of headache, I think.
My advice for students now, you know, in their junior year going into their senior year is, you know, you'll get through it. It is going to be tough. You know, there's some stress involved. I mean, it's taking a big step from high school to college, and it's going to take a lot of work, but you'll get through it. You know, there's people, maybe they feel like they need to challenge themselves to take some high level courses, and it can create more stress than, you know, taking an AP versus a non-AP course. But in the end, it's going to reward you really well. And I think a lot of kids stress out in the moment about what's going to happen in the future. And I think if you just focus on, you know, what you need to do now and just getting it done, and making sure that you put your best into it, that you're gonna come out on the right end of it.
And I'll give my advice to the parents. Try to stay organized, like Moses said. Use the timeline, like I mentioned before, and try to keep track and take notes from each of the schools that your child visits. We use the college admission toolkit from the VSAC folder and took notes. And that way we could do a good comparison after the fact, or I didn't do the comparison, he did, but some of the things that he noticed, we reminded him, look at those same things at each school so that you can compare them in the end. And then we use those comparison sheets from the VSAC folder. Likewise, we did a comparison, like financial page it was the little spreadsheet for each school, which was super helpful to stay organized. And it also gave him a visual in the end of, this is what your future could look like with your finances.
I can give my advice next, unless you want to go, Nicole. You're welcome to.
Oh, sorry. I was slow on the unmute button. I think my piece of advice is for students to just remember what's important to you. As you're talking to lots of people, there can be a lot of distractions where your friends are applying, family members asking you over and over, where are you going to go to college? What are you looking at? And just write down 3 things that are important to you about why you want to go to college, and just hold on to that throughout the process and use that as a touch point. Because I think sometimes students lose track of what was really important to them, and they get dazzled by a beautiful virtual tour, or they talk to a friend who's looking at a particular program and they say, oh yeah, I could do that too. This is really about you. And so really center the process on what's important for you and where will you be successful.
And I think my piece of advice kind of goes along the lines of everyone's with, you know, being organized, but I would say, you know, build your college admissions search team. You all have awesome school counselors here that are more than happy to support you. They should certainly be on your list. Include your family in that team as well. Mom, dad, aunts, uncles, cousins, but don't let them be the captain of the team. You should definitely be the captain of the team. You know, I guess this is kind of a sports metaphor I'm going down here. I don't know why, but, you know, let them kind of, you know, bounce ideas off of them. Certainly include VSAC, all you Vermonters, as part of that team as well, because they're going to be a huge resource, whether it's need-based aid or whether it's those competitive scholarships that they have. I know that some of those scholarship deadlines was today. So, make sure that you are prepared for that come senior year, fast forward. And then use your admission counselors as a team. For every school that you're, going to apply to, you should know who your admission counselor is, or who, at least someone that you can connect with, like Mike at St. Mike's, or, me or Moses or Nicole, know someone on that campus that you can call when you have questions because you haven't gotten a decision, or you are wondering what your application status is. We're all here to help you as well. So I think crafting a really strong search team is going to be really supportive for you as well.
For me, I'm gonna give my advice as enjoy it. You're actually coming into your last year of high school, and you're most likely not going to see a lot of your friends that you're currently going to school with like ever again. So enjoy it, and as sad as that may be, just enjoy it and take the time. Don't just like look into the future and be like, oh yeah, this is my future. Like I can't wait for it. Like wait for it. Trust me. There's definitely like that moment in your senior year where you're like, wow, like I'm here, like I'm in my last semester, but yeah, just definitely enjoy it, and enjoy the time with your family, with conversations and keeping them in the loop. Enjoy the time with your friends, enjoy the time with your teachers. Colchester is graced with, I don't even know how they have the lineup that they have, but it's amazing. But yeah, I would definitely say just enjoy your time.
Great advice, all. And now you can see why we asked Colby to be on the committee, because, who needs promotion when you got that guy working for you? So I want to, there's one question that popped up in the chat before we say goodnight, and that is, what about out-of-state schools? And so I would just like to say that the representation of colleges that we had here tonight, the advice that you got, everything they said is going to apply to schools in other states. So there's nothing that you would get from an out-of-state school that you didn't already get here tonight. But in terms of like, how do we look at schools out of state, or what should we consider when we're thinking about going out of state? We actually, we covered visiting schools in the last junior college night. We're happy to talk more about that. But if in terms of like just searching for schools out of state, well, Naviance has a college search tool. And then there are others as well, like Princeton Review, College Board's Big Picture. There's lots of places to search up schools in other states, and they all work on slightly different algorithms, but you can plug in some filtering information. The one that we take students through at CHS is the Naviance the tool for college search. So, but again, don't be afraid to ask us those questions. We're happy to chat with you about that. Folks, thanks for coming tonight, and thanks again to our excellent panelists for taking up time of their evening. Although I do have to say, it's freezing cold outside, and it is always freezing when we have this night. So this is like the first time our college panel doesn't have to face a long cold drive home. So that's probably a good deal for them. But thank you all for taking the time to come out tonight. We really appreciate it.
And we're getting some thank yous in the chat to everybody too. So for all of you. So thank you everybody for taking the time, and for everyone watching, thanks so much for being here, and reach out if you have questions.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.